Welcome. This is one of a series of podcasts from People and Nature. My name's Andrew and I'm presenting some of the podcasts. People and Nature is a blog that you will find at peoplenature.org. The tagline is some socialist ideas about society, the earth and their interaction. The author Gabriel Levy also writes more widely about social movements and political issues, and this podcast is an example. This one's entitled, You Shut Down Our Parliament, We Shut Down the Streets. It reports on a recent demonstration and discusses the political crisis around Brexit and the way that reflects a deeper crisis in the British ruling class and its party, the Tory party. Things are moving fast inside Parliament and outside, and by the time you listen to this, it may be that the government is tottering, falling, on its way to a general election or whatever. But we're posting the podcast anyway, since the ideas in it are going to be relevant whatever happens next. If you find the line of argument interesting, then check out the blog at peoplenature.org, or you can follow it on Twitter with the handle @peoplenature. Here's the article by Gabriel. Thousands of people demonstrated at the weekend against Boris Johnson's suspension of Parliament. On the London demonstration, the slogan that worked best, in my view, was, You shut down our Parliament, we shut down the streets. Several hundred people set off from Whitehall, where there was a much larger crowd, and shouted it as they blocked Westminster Bridge. There was a similar action on Waterloo Bridge. The slogan says, Power is not something to be quarrelled over by government, parliament and the judiciary. It's something that all of us need to fight for. It says, by taking action on the streets, people themselves can impact on this tug of war between different branches of the state. It says, democracy is something we all create. It's not something that John Major goes to remind a judge about so that he can remind Boris Johnson. Whatever happens next, we need to expand that democracy on demonstrations, in communities, in workplaces, in our organisations, against the most right-wing government the UK has had for the best part of a century. Whether or not the UK leaves the EU without a deal on the 31st of October, this government will continue to claim victims. The thousands of people who have lost their jobs due to Brexit uncertainty, the millions of migrant workers from the EU or from outside facing discrimination and cruelty, the millions of people impacted by Tory austerity policies that long preceded the Brexit referendum, and all of us who are threatened by the inaction of this and other governments on climate change. Whatever happens about Brexit, Johnson's suspension of Parliament has already taken politics to a new place. His gang of zealots are tearing up rules and conventions that have provided the framework for the way government and Parliament work with each other for a couple of centuries. It's not only the suspension of Parliament. These clowns have put rumours into the press that even if Parliament legislated against a no-deal Brexit, Johnson might simply ignore it, or refuse to take the law to the Queen to sign. Ripping up the rule book is all part of the act. But their approach creates at least two sorts of problems for the way that the ruling class wields power, in my view. First, parliamentary democracy exerts social control, not primarily by physical repression, but by convincing people that the state is, in however poor a fashion, looking after their interests. When the government busts through convention to pursue policies so obviously damaging to millions of people, the ideological mythology may not hold. Second, whatever happens next, Johnson's subversion will deepen the crisis both of the Conservative Party and of the British state. In the 4 days after the suspension of Parliament was announced, the Scottish Tory leader quit. One of the leading Tories in the Lords quit, and civil servants are in turmoil after the sacking of Sonia Khan and the undermining of the Chancellor Sajid Javid by the head cases at number 10 Downing Street. The last time I checked, the government had a parliamentary majority of 1. But these short-term political problems are nothing compared to the cracks opening up in the edifice of British statehood. The biggest of these is the unresolved status of the north of Ireland, which, in the guise of the argument about the border with the Irish Republic, has been the biggest obstacle to Tory unity in support of Brexit with a deal. But there's Scotland too. The presence of a bunch of fanatics in Number 10, never mind a no-deal Brexit, reopens the question of independence. All this underlines the point that Johnson is acting out of weakness and desperation, not strength. That doesn't mean that the next weeks and months will be nicer. They might be nastier. Desperate people can lash out. But it's important to bear in mind. The UK is a declining former imperial power that has to find a new place in a global order dominated by ever greedier finance capital. There's plenty to say about the Labour Party's limitations in facing this political crisis. Many of my lefty friends say that Jeremy Corbyn is doing badly. To my mind, that's not really the point. Even if Corbyn was a master strategist, a tactical wizard, and a public orator capable of working crowds into a frenzy, I don't think that would alter things much. Corbyn is trapped at the head of a parliamentary party that mostly thinks within the framework that Johnson and his vandals are attacking with hammers. The average Labour MP wouldn't know a mass extra-parliamentary movement if it ran them over in the street. The Labour Party is a creature of the parliamentary system, and although it's been refreshing to see thousands of people flooding into it and changing it substantially since Corbyn was elected, the fate of Johnson's government will not be determined in the first place by Labour. A broader movement is needed. New forms of solidarity, of organisation, of our power. You shut down our parliament, we shut down the streets.